Do you know what it feels like to be invisible to the only family that's supposed to love you? Jake's voice cracked raw with pain and anger as he stared into the distance, eyes burning with a storm of emotions. I wasn't just abandoned, I was erased like I never mattered. And now they want to rewrite my story like I'm some charity case. But I'm not their project. I'm not their secret. His words hung heavy in the air, filled with the weight of years spent fighting alone on the cold streets, the hunger, the fear, the constant battle to survive, without a name, without a home. Stay with me, he whispered, voice barely steady, because what's coming next will change everything. It's not just a story about a lost boy or a rich family's secrets. It's about what happens when the past refuses to stay buried and the truth claws its way to the surface, whether you're ready for it or not. Jake's heart pounded, a mixture of dread and fierce hope battling inside him. If you think you know how this ends, think again. The truth will shock you, and it will shake everything you thought was real. Emily slipped quietly out of Oakwood Manor as the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the manicured lawns. It was the only moment she felt free, away from the endless rules, the cold walls, and the suffocating silence of her gilded cage. With her sketchbook clutched tightly under her jacket, she moved through the familiar paths of Central Park, the city's heartbeat pulsing softly around her. Her caretaker, Anna, distracted by her phone, hadn't noticed Emily slip away. It was the first time in weeks Emily had dared to escape the mansion's strict watch. But freedom was never simple. From the edge of the trees, Emily caught the unsettling sight of two men watching her. Their smiles didn't reach their eyes, cold, calculating like predators sizing up prey. Panic curled in her stomach as she took a step back. Then her foot caught on a root and she stumbled to the ground. "Are you okay?" one of the men asked, reaching toward her. Before she could respond, a voice cut sharply through the tension. "Back off." From the shadows, a boy appeared. Around her age, maybe a little older, but with a presence far beyond his years. His clothes were worn, his backpack battered, but his eyes burned with fierce determination. "Leave her alone," he said, stepping between Emily and the men. The men hesitated, surprise flashing across their faces. The boy didn't move. After a tense moment, the men muttered threats and slipped away into the darkening park. Emily's heart raced as she looked up at her protector. "Thank you," she whispered, still shaking. He nodded briefly. "I'm Jake," he said before disappearing as suddenly as he'd come. Jake woke before dawn, curled up behind a closed newsstand on Mail Avenue. The concrete pressed cold against his back, the thin blanket he'd scavenged damp and threadbare. His muscles ached from a night spent sleeping on unforgiving pavement, his feet swollen from days of walking. With tired eyes, Jake pulled his backpack onto his shoulder, worn and heavy with whatever little he owned. Today, like every day, he would try to sell candies and trinkets to passing strangers. It was a dangerous game, one he played with sharp instincts. "Please buy something," he whispered to the passing crowd, voice low but desperate. Most ignored him, clutching their bags tighter or averting their eyes. Jake knew what those looks meant. He was invisible, or worse, a nuisance. But beneath that invisibility was a boy who had learned to survive alone. He remembered his mother's promise, soft words whispered before she vanished without warning. In the grand dining room of Oakwood Manor, Emily pushed her breakfast around the plate. Fresh fruit and exotic juices sat untouched. The room was silent except for Anna scrolling lazily on the couch. "Can I go outside after lunch?" Emily asked quietly. "No," Anna replied without looking up. "Your father said no." The word hung heavy in the air. Emily climbed the stairs and lay on her bed, staring at the ceiling. The cold hum of the air conditioner filled the silence. Her fingers found the hidden sketchbook, the only place she felt safe. She flipped to the page she'd drawn the night before, Jake's determined face standing between her and danger. She'd never drawn anything like this, but it felt like truth, raw and unfiltered. Jake counted his few coins. 28 cents. Barely enough for a cheap breakfast. He bought stale bread and an expired soda from a corner store and sat on the cracked curb to eat. He watched the city's glass towers reflect a world that never wanted him. From Emily's window, the perfect garden lay below. Guards patrolled quietly, unaware of the girl's restless heart. She considered sneaking out again, but hesitated. Instead, she unfolded a blank sheet and began sketching a map, a secret plan to find Jake again, to escape her golden cage. Richard Monteith. Emily's father sat in his sleek downtown office. The setting sun cast shadows across his polished desk. He glanced once at the dusty photo of his late wife, but quickly turned his attention back to business mergers, deals, flights. His daughter was safe, protected by the best. But across the city, two very different worlds were about to collide. Jake whispered into the darkness. "She saw me." Emily traced his name in her sketchbook. Jake. That night, Emily pushed open the side gate of Central Park. Her heart pounded as she slipped into the cool shadows. The main gate's guard was distracted by his phone. She moved swiftly to their meeting spot, a bench near the fountain. Minutes passed. Doubt gnawed at her. Had she imagined it all? Was Jake real? Then a shadow shifted. Jake appeared, but something had changed. His eyes, once fierce and fearless, were now wary, guarded. "I knew you'd come," Emily said nervously. Jake said nothing, watching her carefully. He pulled out the food he'd brought, bread and juice. Emily stepped closer, offering a sandwich. Jake hesitated but accepted. "You followed me?" he asked quietly. "No," she answered. "I thought about you." Jake scoffed. "Because I'm poor, because I'm brave." Her heart stung, but she didn't back down. "No, because you saved me." Jake looked away, then sat down under the trees. "You shouldn't be alone," Emily said softly. Jake smiled faintly. "And you? You have a rich father and a big house. You're just pretending." Emily's eyes widened. "This isn't a game." Days passed. Their secret meetings became a lifeline. They developed signals: Jake's whistle, Emily's 2 knocks. Jake led her to an abandoned rooftop, a sanctuary overlooking the city. There, Jake shared his fears about survival, about whether Emily would come back. Emily shared her dreams, escaping the cage, finding someone who saw the real her. Unseen Martin, a shadow from Richard's past, watched from the darkness, eyes cold and calculating. Emily's escapes grew riskier, but so did her desire for freedom. Yet the city was closing in. Cameras captured every step. Richard's suspicion deepened. When Emily disappeared for hours on a rainy afternoon, alarms sounded. Private investigators were unleashed to find Emily's mysterious friend Jake. Jake felt the pressure tighten. Men in dark suits followed his every move. The streets that once felt like home turned hostile. His fight was no longer just for survival, it was for trust, for belonging. Thank you for watching the first part of Emily and Jake's story. Their worlds are on a collision course, and secrets long buried are stirring beneath the surface. If you were caught between two worlds, one of wealth and control, the other of hardship and freedom, what would you do? If this story moved you, please like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support means everything. Stay tuned, the story continues soon. The next morning, the city felt colder, not just in temperature, but in atmosphere. Jake awoke to the harsh clang of garbage cans and distant car horns echoing down the empty alleyway he called home for the night. His body ached from the restless sleep on cold concrete. The weight of unseen eyes pressed against his skin, an instinctual warning. He scanned the dim street. Something was off. The usual crowd was missing. The air carried a tension that tightened around his chest. He wasn't just alone, he was being hunted. Jake's mind raced as he adjusted his battered backpack and slipped into the early morning fog. He avoided familiar routes, zigzagging through narrow lanes, eyes sharp for any movement. But the feeling didn't fade. Somewhere someone was following, watching, waiting. Back in Oakwood Manor, Emily's days were filled with muted frustration. The walls that once felt protective now suffocated her. Every glance from Anna, every curt word from her father, Richard Monteith, reminded her of the invisible chains binding her to a life she had never chosen. She clung to the memory of Jake, his fierce protection, the way he looked at her like she was more than a fragile girl in a golden cage. That memory was her lifeline, but it also terrified her. What if Jake was caught because of her? What if the two worlds she straddled collided in a way neither could survive? The pressure on Jake intensified. One afternoon, while selling candy near the busy market street, Jake noticed a man standing at the edge of the crowd. Tall, bald, wearing a faded brown cap pulled low over his eyes. The man's gaze pierced Jake like a knife. Jake's heart pounded. This was no coincidence. The man followed Jake's every move, appearing at the square, the subway station, the park. Each time Jake's pulse quickened, his breath shortened. He tried to lose him in the maze of city streets, but the shadow persisted. Fear mingled with anger. Who was this man? What did he want? And most terrifyingly, was it because of Emily? Meanwhile, Emily's world tightened as well. Her father, Richard, grew more vigilant. Private investigators traced her steps, scrutinizing her every move. Anna's smiles became forced, her eyes wary. Emily found herself trapped between obedience and rebellion, safety and escape. One evening, she sat alone in her room, the sketchbook open on her lap. Her drawings of Jake had multiplied, every line capturing his fierce spirit, his guarded eyes the scars of a life on the edge. Her thoughts churned. Could she risk everything for Jake? Could she trust him, the boy from the streets who had saved her? Could she trust herself? Jake and Emily's secret meetings became their only sanctuary. On a rainy Thursday, they met beneath the crumbling steps of an abandoned library, a place forgotten by the world, but alive with whispered memories. Jake was tense, scanning the shadows. "They're closing in," he whispered, voice tight with fear. "Men in suits. They want me gone." Emily reached out, gripping his hand. "We'll figure it out. Together." But Jake shook his head. "I'm not just someone you can save. I'm a problem for you, for your family." Emily's eyes burned with defiance. "Then maybe it's time we stop being afraid." That night, Jake could hardly sleep. His mind was a storm of memories and worries. The streets had hardened him, taught him to trust no one, but Emily had cracked through his armor like a ray of sunlight piercing thick clouds. He feared what would happen if his past caught up with them both. What if Emily's father discovered the truth? The real truth about Jake's connection to his family? Jake wasn't just a street kid. He was a key to secrets buried long ago, secrets that could shatter lives. He clenched his fists, the weight of choices pressing down on him. Could he protect Emily? Could he protect himself? Days later, Emily sat in the mansion's grand library, flipping through an old photo album she had found hidden behind a loose panel. The pictures told a story she hadn't known of a woman with kind eyes and a soft smile holding a baby boy. Emily's breath caught. Could this be Jake's mother? Her mind raced with questions, and suddenly the distance between the two worlds felt both thinner and more terrifying. The city's pulse quickened as tension mounted. Jake noticed the man in the brown cap more often, lurking, watching, always just out of reach. One evening, as rain hammered the pavement, Jake ducked into a narrow alley. The man stepped out, blocking his path. "Jake," the man said, voice low and rough. "You don't know what you're mixed up in." Jake's heart pounded in his throat. "Who are you? Someone who used to protect this family before I was cast out." A surge of anger and fear mixed in Jake's chest. "What do you want to keep you safe if you're willing to listen?" Jake hesitated, torn between distrust and desperate hope. Back at Oakwood Manor, Richard Monteith sat in his office, the weight of secrets pressing heavily on his broad shoulders. DNA tests, old letters, hidden histories, all pieces of a puzzle he had tried to ignore. Now the past was crashing into the present, and the boy from the streets was no longer invisible. Richard stared out the window, the city lights blurring in the rain. Could he protect his daughter? Could he protect his son? Jake and Emily's worlds were spiraling toward a reckoning. At their next meeting under the cold glow of street lamps, Emily looked into Jake's eyes. "We don't have much time," Jake said, voice rough. "They're coming for me. For us." Emily swallowed hard, the fear threatening to break through her resolve. "What do we do?" Jake's jaw tightened. "We fight, but not with fists, with truth." Emily nodded, though uncertainty gnawed at her. Could the truth be their salvation or their destruction? Their story was no longer just about survival. It was about identity, family, and the courage to face a world that wanted to keep them apart. As the rain soaked their clothes and the city hummed around them, they clung to each other, two fractured souls daring to hope. Thank you for sticking with Emily and Jake's journey. I realize the story may feel like it's pausing here, but sometimes the hardest moments come just before everything changes. What would you do if the people who should protect you are the ones who might tear you apart? If this story has touched you, please like the video and drop your thoughts in the comments. Your support means everything. Stay with us, the next part will be worth the wait. The night was heavy with rain washing the city clean, but leaving its shadows deeper than ever. Emily sat by the window of her room in Oakwood Manor, watching droplets race down the glass. The storm outside echoed the turmoil in her heart. Every secret uncovered, every risk taken had brought them here to a crossroads that would shape their futures forever. Jake's world, once filled with uncertainty and fear, was now tangled with hers. But tonight, beneath the thunder's roar, he sat alone in a dimly lit shelter on the city's outskirts, his thoughts dark and restless. Their lives had collided in a way no one could have predicted: a street kid and a girl born into privilege, bound by secrets, lies, and a fragile hope that something better awaited them. The following morning, Emily found herself standing before the grand doors of her father's study. Her heart pounded as she clutched the small envelope Jake had given her, a collection of faded photos, letters, and a truth she'd only just begun to grasp. With trembling hands, she pushed open the door. Richard Monteith looked up from his papers, surprise flickering across his stern features. "Emily," he said, voice quieter than usual. She took a deep breath. "I need to talk to you about Jake." For the first time, the barrier between father and daughter felt less like a wall and more like a fragile bridge. Meanwhile, Jake paced the shelter's cold floor, replaying the words of the man in the brown cap, a man who claimed to have once protected Richard Monteith's family, now cast out and bitter. The man's offer to help was tempting, but came with a warning: trust no one blindly. Jake wrestled with his fears. Could he trust this stranger? Could he trust Richard, the man who'd unknowingly been his father all along? The weight of betrayal and hope fought fiercely inside him. Back in the study, Emily laid out the envelope's contents on the polished desk. "Your mother," she said softly, "wasn't who you thought she was. She left to protect you, to keep you safe from a world that wasn't ready for your truth." Richard's eyes flickered with pain and regret. "I never stopped looking for her. For you." Emily's voice wavered. "Then help me find him. Help us." Richard's silence spoke volumes. Jake met the man in the brown cap again, under the veil of twilight. The man handed him a worn leather journal, pages filled with stories, photographs, and secrets that had been buried deep. "This family," the man said, "is complicated, but you belong to it, and it's time they knew the whole truth." Jake clutched the journal, the fragile threads of identity weaving tighter. Days turned into a whirlwind. Jake, Emily, and Richard confronted the shadows of their past, the hidden wounds, the unanswered questions. Richard made a decision. He would protect his son not with money or status, but with presence and honesty. Jake was no longer invisible. At the city hall, surrounded by lawyers and flashing cameras, Jake's world shifted. He was officially recognized as Richard Monteith's son. The press buzzed with stories: the street kid turned heir, the boy who challenged the odds. But Jake didn't seek fame or fortune. He sought belonging. Emily stood by his side, a steadfast friend and sister of circumstance. The tension peaked when Martin, the man who had stalked them in the shadows, confronted Richard in his office. "You don't know what you're dealing with, Martin," hissed, eyes cold. Richard stood tall. "I know enough to protect my family." A battle of wills ensued, power, pride, and protection clashing like thunder. Through it all, Jake's heart wrestled with anger and forgiveness. He walked the halls of Oakwood Manor, a place that had once felt like a prison, but now held the possibility of a home. One evening, Emily found him on the rooftop garden, gazing at the city skyline. "Do you regret it?" she asked. Jake looked at the lights shimmering below. "Regret, no. But I'm scared. Scared I won't fit anywhere." Emily smiled gently. "You don't have to fit. You just have to be." The climax came quietly but with profound impact. Richard, in a heartfelt gesture, handed Jake a letter from his mother. Words of love, apology, and hope. Jake read it under the soft glow of the lamp, tears tracing paths down his cheeks. He was not a mistake. He was a story worth telling. In the weeks that followed, Jake began school not in the elite private halls his father had first envisioned, but in a neighborhood public school where he could be himself. Emily and Jake continued their friendship, bound by shared history and a promise to face the future together. Richard learned to be a father not just in name, but in action, showing up, listening, and healing old wounds. The story closes with a scene of quiet hope. Jake standing by the school gate, backpack slung over one shoulder, a small smile breaking through. Emily beside him, offering support and light. Richard watching from a distance, no longer an absent figure, but a father learning to hold space. The city buzzes around them, full of challenges and promises. But for the first time, they face it as a family, imperfect yet whole. Thank you for joining Emily and Jake on this journey, a story of struggle, truth, and the courage to embrace one's identity against all odds. What part of their story resonated with you the most? Have you ever faced a moment where you had to choose between safety and truth? Please share your thoughts in the comments. If you love this story, comment no point 3 below. If you think it could be better, comment no 1. If it felt just okay, comment no 2. Also, let us know which country you're watching from. Don't forget to like, drop a heart, and share this video with friends. Your support means the world.